And I think we all thought that Tamar Manasseh is just the most inspiring, motivational, amazing community builder and leader, who says she's inspired by tikkun olam and repairing the cracks in the world. And I think her model of deterring and preventing violence and community building in this corner of Chicago has spread to other neighborhoods in Chicago and to other cities, and is just kind of inspiring this sense of tackling the violence that confronts many cities, but also community building in all communities. And it also brings up, I think, really interesting questions. And most of this will be questions and answers that you can write your questions in the Q&A or raise your hand electronically. And then Professor Yaris will call on people, and Ariana will then unmute you to call to ask your question. But there are a lot of really interesting issues also relating sometimes to the fact that Black Jews are questioned about their Judaism, which, as Tamar says, is the thing that pisses her off most, right, in the documentary, and the challenges that Black Jews face also in the Jewish community, but also timely issues that the Jewish community is called upon to act in terms of violence in our cities and across the country, especially now. I also wanted to kind of do a shout out and welcome to Brad Rothschild. This is the third time he's joining us at MSU. So the first time was with the movie Kinderblock 66, which was also a documentary on how children survived the Holocaust in Buchenwald. And he worked closely also with our Professor Ken Waltzer, who was in the documentary and was a consultant to the documentary. And then you came a few years ago back to show your film. Sorry, I have all this printed out here on African asylum seekers in Israel. Remind me of the title again, Brad.
It's called African Exodus.
African Exodus, which we showed in our Israeli Film Festival.
That's right.
It was a fantastic film, if any of you want to seek it out, but also about the hardship and challenges of African asylum seekers in Israel in terms of restrictions for asylum and challenges while they're there, which was very moving. And then you spoke in a panel after that film. So it's such a pleasure to have you here for the third time with a third amazing film. And I know you're working, I think, on a film right now that also, I think, deals with the Holocaust and Holocaust survivors and so forth. And maybe if you get a question on that, you may also talk a little bit about that. But again, I think both of you are very inspiring and motivating. And I think in these dark times, that's what we need. So it's such a pleasure to have you here. I think if I'll start with a question. I know that professors from English and Yaris will have a question, and then we'll open it up to everyone else. So I think, one question I think would be for you, Tamar, in terms of the really inspiring community building that you have done. What are some lessons, words for us in terms of so many of our students and faculty members and community members who are listening, who are struggling, how we can be more welcoming as a community and a more unified community, both kind of nationally. This is kind of a big question, but you have all the answers, as we saw in the documentary. I mean, what other, other than modeling, kind of the community building that you do you have any other kind of words of advice for our students in our community as we're facing so many cracks in our society that demand repair?
Okay, that was a simple question.
That was a big one, yeah.
Well, you know what, I mean, like what I would have said 6 years ago versus what I have to say about that now is two completely different things. We see people someone asked me, what do people on the block think about me being Jewish? And the thing is, they don't think anything about it anymore. They don't think about it. It doesn't It doesn't come into their consciousness at all, one way or another. It doesn't. So no one says, oh, I hate her because she's a Jew. And no one says, I love her because she's a Jew. People just know me. They just either like Tamar or they don't. But they all know that I'm Jewish. They all know what I do. And the thing about it is, if we opened ourselves up more and stopped being so afraid of the world would stop being so afraid of us. So sometimes when people say things and they say these things that aren't quite right about Jews, they say it because they don't know us, because they never come in contact with us, because we live in our own separate world from everybody else. We live in our own little enclaves within our own areas, within our own communities. We never venture out because we're so worried about what can happen to us if we do. And by us being so worried about what can happen to us if we do, it makes us look like we are very standoffish, like we don't have any desire to be a part of the rest of the world. And so people don't know what to think about us unless we tell them, unless we show them. So my thing is, we have to stop being afraid of the world. We have to stop being afraid of the world that we're supposed to repair. We have to stop being afraid of it. We have to go out into it. We have to let people meet us. We have to be a part of the world, not just the Jewish community, not just the communities that we live in, but the entire world, the world around us. We have to engage with that. We have to be in it. We can't be afraid of it. And I understand. I mean, we have a history where, terrible things have happened to Jews over and over again in history. And it has made us a bit skittish and it has made us a bit afraid. I understand completely. But sometimes we have to step outside that and we have to trust God and we have to trust our friends and we have to trust, people, you want to be allies with people like us, with all of these other people. You have to let those people be allies with you too. And that's the thing. Very often Jews come out to the block and they want to help the people there, but they don't want the people there to help them with anything. And it can't be that way. Everybody wants to feel like they are needed, like they're important to somebody. Everybody wants to feel like they have something to offer. And the thing is, very often we go places and we offer stuff to other people, but we don't let them offer us anything. We don't accept anything from them. And we have to change that. It has to be a give and take. We have to have conversations. We have to get in. We have to let each other into our lives, into our worlds. So that's what I would say. I would say, step outside of your comfort zone. Stop being afraid. Step outside. Right now, we're all afraid of something. When we went to North Carolina in the movie, it was interesting to me because we were out in like a really rural part of like Robeson County in North Carolina, out in the middle of nowhere. And it was Brad, myself, my mom, and our cameraman. Everybody's Jewish. My mom and I are Black. And the cameraman and Brad clearly are not as dark as me. That's all. But the thing was, when nightfall hit, Brad and the cameraman were more worried about getting back to civilization than me and my mother were, for the same reason. It's like, we're Jews. We can't be out here. We can't be out in the middle of the rural South at night. Now, Black people think that all the time. There was once a such thing as sundown towns and stuff like that. So we know, don't get caught out here in a place like this at night because you're Black and bad things happen to you. When you get caught in places like this, they can happen. But it was so interesting to me that it wasn't like, oh, we have to hurry up and get back into the city because we're going to miss dinner. It was like, no, we can't be out here. So the very same things that Brad was afraid of are the same exact things that I was raised to be afraid of, that my mom was raised to be afraid of. It's the same fear. And the thing is, we don't talk about that. We don't know we have the same monsters under our beds because we don't talk. So we can't be allies if we don't talk. I can't tell you there's nothing to worry about, and you can't tell me there's nothing to worry about if we don't actually have a conversation. If we don't go into spaces like that, that might scare us both, but at least I know you're here for me and I'm here for you. So I would say, just step outside of your comfort zone, give it a chance. Just try it out. Go live somewhere you wouldn't normally live. Go hang out with someone you wouldn't normally hang out with. Go sit on a corner with crazy people who cook dinner every night. Go do that. So that's what I would have to say about that. Just try new things.
Wow, Tamar, that was so inspiring. I almost don't quite know how to follow it with anything that is not going to sound so completely facile, but I'll try and switch directions a little bit and give you a question that's maybe a little bit more local and a bit less national and global. So the movie was so inspiring, and one of the themes that I picked up on in the movie is that you were really charting a leadership course in two different spaces and running into two different kinds of obstacles within those domains. You were leading this amazing initiative, right, on the corner to help provide a safe place and a sense of community for the community more broadly. And then you were also charting a leadership course within a religious space, within a Jewish space, and pursuing rabbinic ordination. And it seemed like in the movie that those two leadership journeys both had their own different challenges. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, actually, just last week, I was told that I would actually be receiving ordination now. December 12th, I'll be actually receiving smicha, so I'm kind of excited, right? But I've had a lot of time to think about this. It's crazy, right? So I've had a lot of time to kind of think about this. And the thing about it is, I'm almost glad that I didn't get ordained when the men in my class that I started out with did, or I would have never done this. I mean, for a woman, it's kind of like I had to work literally twice as hard. So it's like I literally had to go out and try to figure out how I could save the world to show that I was qualified to be a rabbi, to prove that I deserve this, so this is the first time that I've ever done a job. I've won a lot of awards for what I do. And whatever award I've ever gotten, I've never felt like I deserved it. And it's just like, who gave me this and why? There are people I feel like who work harder, who deserve it more. And it always makes me go out and work harder to actually live up to who people believe that I am. The people who put the confidence in me, had the confidence in me to give me this award. This time, I did the work in the front end, on the front end. I earned this. I earned it. And I earned it day after day after day, showing up on that block. As me and Brad were talking about the other day, every day when I said Hineni, I earned it for all of those years. I started the academy 12 years ago, 12. And I'm just now receiving smicha. And so it's kind of like those challenges, they were kind of one and the same to me. It was all just one thing. It's not necessarily so much to me about saving the community as it is being a Jew in a world that needs a Jew in it. It's being the man in a place where there are no men. That's what it is. It's being that, it's doing that in that space. Does that make sense at all to you guys? Kinda. But it's like that. It's being what the community needs when it needs it. And I'm only that thing because I am a Jew. So me being actually taught to be a rabbi, actually receiving the education, actually going through the courses and doing the work, prepared me to do something else before I even became a rabbi. So the real gift of this was on the front end. It's not on the back end. Whether or not I ever get smicha, it kind of doesn't matter, because the day after that, my job isn't going to be any different than it was the day before it. So they're kind of one in the same for me. And it's kind of like, I don't know, if I didn't know that I could absolutely do something about this, then I probably wouldn't have never sat on the corner. I would have been scared like everybody else. I would have never done that. But because I'm a Jew, I absolutely knew that there was something I could do. I just need to figure out exactly what that thing was. And so it's kind of like all of the problems or the obstacles that I may face in the space in the space on the block in that world, they seem small. They seem small because that's what I'm supposed to face. They're cracks. These are big cracks. They need to be repaired. Nothing about that is going to be easy. And if I'm going to be a rabbi, I have to be prepared for nothing to be easy. I have to be prepared to do the work. Whatever the work is, I have to be prepared to do that. And if I can't do the work, then what am I doing? What am I doing trying to be a rabbi? So this was my test. What happened on the block was my test. There's no professor that can ever give me a test that would determine whether or not I am qualified to be a rabbi better than the one that I've lived for the past 7 years. So it's hard for me to separate the two. The problems are one and the same. It's all of it is one thing to me. I hope that made sense, Laura. Did that make sense? Okay.
And actually, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was actually, my question, I had other questions, but just in listening to these two, I want to build on it a little, build on the question. So in the film, you show yourself really kind of bringing together two communities, the Black community and the Jewish community. And I'm wondering, after listening to your answers to both of these questions, whether you intended that, whether that sort of was a byproduct, and whether you think that's going to be continuing and lasting, whether there's ways that you're going to kind of build that, or if it was just kind of one-shot things and those were what were there, because they were really beautiful scenes. I mean, some of those, it's amazing what you were able to put together. They were phenomenal. I was telling Brad, my 10-year-old daughter watched it with me, and she was so excited to see the sukkah. You know, we missed our sukkah party because of COVID. She was so excited to see it. So they were beautiful, but I'm curious about sort of whether that was your intent and whether you think it will be able to last, or whether your intent is to have that last.
You know what? I didn't intend that to happen, but now I do. I'm very intentional with it now. And the thing is, I'm a bridge. I was literally born to be a bridge, literally born to be exactly what I am. I was born to be very Black and very Jewish all at the same time. I don't question either. Both of them make perfect sense to me. And they work together exactly the way that they're supposed to work together. So one helps me understand the other. One helps me heal the other. It's always a perfect synthesis for me. And so I've been able to I grew up this way. I mean, growing up, I lived in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the country, but I went to school in Hyde Park, in one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the city. It's where the University of Chicago is. It's where Barack Obama's Chicago home is. It's where the mayor of Chicago lived. It's right across the street from my Jewish day school. I grew up in two worlds. So literally, I had to become the bridge that I would cross every day to navigate both of those worlds, to go back and forth between the two. So when you have family, like the family that I have, like on the block, I mean, you can't hide. You don't really hide a lot of stuff from your family when you see them every day. You can't hide too much stuff. So there were things that I couldn't hide. So I couldn't hide on days when I was fasting. I couldn't hide when I was lighting candles on Shabbat or eating challah on the corner, or I couldn't hide these things, and there were always questions. So now that there's questions, let me explain to you why I'm doing this. And so in that explanation, there was always more questions. So how did you get like this? How did you find out about this? Why do you do it? Blah, 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 blah. And the thing was, I started doing these things with other people. I started inviting my family from the block into these things. So if I have to do Christmas with you, you're going to do Hanukkah with me. So now we have Christmas, Hanukkah. That's what we have. And we include everybody in that. And it is a Kanara, it's a menorah, it's a Christmas tree, and everybody's having a great time. So when we talk about like Sukkot, I'll invite like pastors from the neighborhood because they're having Pentecost then. So it's a conversation. There are all of these really interesting conversations about spirituality in the Black community, how diverse it actually is, but since we never talk about it, we don't know. So what I'm doing now because this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. This is my path. This is what I was born to do. Like now, everywhere I go, whoever I talk to in all of these Q&As, and I travel a lot now because we're expanding. When I go to these places to expand mask, I always seek out the Jewish community in those places. Because what happens is, if we're talking about rebuilding a bridge between the Black community and the Jewish community, like the one that existed in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement, we're really going to have a real conversation about that. Fine, let's do that. So if we're going to build a bridge, this is how we're going to do it. I'm Black and I'm Jewish, and I'm not afraid to go into a Black community and sit down with Black people and talk about what you actually really need. What does this community need? Because that's what I do. I mean, being the executive director of MASK, I can't go anywhere and just decide I'm going to start a MASK chapter. I have to actually go and do an assessment. I have to ask people in that community, what is it that you need? What do you need from us? How can we best serve you? How can we help you help your community? They tell us what they need. We do our best to provide that, to help them get access to whatever it is they need access to, or to help them build whatever they need to build. That's what we do. So the idea is, so what if, me being Jewish, why don't I go to the Jewish community in this city? And I say, hey, the Black community needs turkeys for Thanksgiving, right? So why can't we provide turkeys for Thanksgiving? And it doesn't go be like, to a middleman. So it doesn't go through a middleman. It goes straight from the Jewish community to the Black community, straight there, just between these two. So I can say, okay, this is what the Jewish community provided. And other Jews can go with me. You can come and serve dinner with me. You can come and drop these turkeys off. You can come and do something. And I can help you start a dialogue because I am Black, because I did lay the foundation for that in that city between these groups. So it's something to build on top of. It's not such a, and a lot of people say, well, I feel uncomfortable going into communities, into the African-American community, because I don't want to be like the white savior. Like I'm coming in to save everybody. And I don't know what people need. And I can't just tell people what they need. You don't have to, because I'm Black and I'm Jewish. So I can tell you what they need because they told me what they need. Because after all, I am Black. And most of the time when I go into communities, I can see what they need. And so if I'm telling you this, and then I'm saying the Jewish community is providing this, and we're going to sit down and talk about it, that's where you begin. That's the bridge. That's where these relationships begin to be rebuilt, where these bridges between these communities begin to be rebuilt. And I think my job is very important, and I take it very seriously. And I mean, I feel really blessed that I'm able to do those things. So that's what I'll be doing in the future.
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much. It really is super inspiring. It's really wonderful.
And tell your daughter next Sukkah party, at the next Sukkah soiree, she's invited.
Thank you. I will. She'll be
Yes.
so excited.
Yes.
All right. Well, I see we have a number of questions coming in from the audience, and so I want to open it up to some of those questions, and also encourage you, if you have not yet had a chance to submit questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So go ahead and put your questions for Tamar and for Brad in those questions, and my job is to we'll spotlight you, right, Ariana, so that you can ask those questions. So this is your official call to get Zoom ready, so that you can ask those questions. So let's perhaps start with Eric's question. Eric Aronoff, are you Zoom ready and available to ask your question to Tamar?
Is that Eric Aronoff?
He's one of our finest students.
Is that a photo of Eric Aronoff? Oh, that is Eric Aronoff.
He's not mute though.
Oh yeah, he's muted.
There we go.
Sorry, I'll get it eventually. Okay. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to be able to talk with both of you. It was a wonderful film. You're doing great work, Tamar, and congratulations
Thank you.
on becoming a rabbi. That's fantastic news. And it's been wonderful to hear you speak so far. I guess my question was related to what you, building on maybe on what you were just talking about in terms of building a bridge, being a bridge between the Black community on the South Side and the Jewish community. Because earlier you were talking about these relationships need to be reciprocal. And so that the Jewish community could be asking the community on the South Side for some help and vice versa. And so I was wondering if you could, again, thinking about the scenes in the film also where you had mostly white Jews coming to visit you, talk with you, hear the kind of work, see the work you're doing there. Can you give a concrete example about how you encourage that kind of reciprocal relationship? It seemed like groups were coming to visit you, see what you did. What did you ask them to do when they went back home, and how did you encourage that reciprocal relationship? And yeah.
I never ask anybody anything, nothing to do when they go back home. Just the fact that they got there, you have no idea what people have, the fear that a lot of people have to overcome just to come to that block. So just getting there, I applaud them, just getting there. Because I mean, it's scary for a lot of people. I mean, I talk to a lot of people outside of the neighborhood, and when I go and speak at congregations on the North Shore, and it's all white Jews, and I hear the fear, and I'm just happy that they conquered it to get there. But the best example that I can think of the reciprocal relationship that I'd really love to see more of, and it's not just on the South Side of Chicago, it's this way everywhere. It's America. This is American Judaism. So it is, I'm a part of American Judaism too. And I'm a part of, just like you are. Now, I might be Black and you might be white, but we're still both American Jews, right? So all of the things that infect other Americans, I mean, it gets us too. So we have to really be careful with our phobias and our fears and our prejudices and everything else. We have to put a lot of that aside, both being American Jews, right? Because we do have that thing in common. So when the tragedy in Pittsburgh happened, I had kids from the South Side that you saw in the movie, those guys, calling me because it was on Shabbat. And they knew, oh my goodness, Tamar is at Temple. Is this happening at Temple? And the thing was, they were so freaked out because they wanted to know, was this happening to all the Jews? What can we do? Do you need us? Oh my goodness, is this happening to our friends? Because now they're concerned about what's happening with other Jews in other places. And since they don't know a lot of Black Jews, it wasn't just me they were concerned with. They were concerned with all of us, with all of those people that came down to the block that you see in the movie, all those white Jews that come down. They form relationships with these kids, with these people on the block. They have their friendships now. And I mean, it's kind of like, wait a minute, those are my friends. So I understand if it's not happening there, it's just happening at temples where white Jews go. So are our friends okay? Where else would you see something like that? Where a 21-year-old kid from a poor neighborhood on the South Side of Chicago, they hear about a shooting in a synagogue on Shabbat, and the first thing they do is think to call another Jew to say, are you okay? And are our friends okay? How do they even know when Shabbat is? How do they know any of these things? But that was their concern. And it blew me away because it was like, wait a minute, you care? And it's like, what do you mean? Of course I care. Because now, whatever it was, whatever you might hear people say, and you see it on the news, and you might, there's this big hurrah, whoop-de-doo about something that somebody has said about Jews that was wrong. And then it's like, okay, well, it's anti-Semitic. And you actually have kids on the South Side who can say, you know what, that's not true. That's not how Jews are, especially not the Jews that I know. But the thing is, that's the trick. You got to know Jews to be able to say, that's not how they are. You're all wrong about them. So that's what I've gotten to see develop on my block. It's a broader sense of community. It's not just a sense of community for people that live on that block or in that neighborhood or on the South Side. It's a community of people all over the city, most of the suburbs. it's getting bigger, it's expanding. So I want to see more of that. I want to build more of that when I travel around the country, when I have these kind of conversations. I want to build more of those kind of things. I want people to be aware of what each other are going through. So Jewish people can come down from the suburbs when they hear about a shooting on the block. So now I hear about a shooting in a synagogue. I need to be there for you. So that's what we're building now. So that's the best example I have of that.
It's a great example. Thank you so much. That was very inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamar. Thanks so much, Eric, for that question. Brad, we have a question for you from someone who'd prefer to remain anonymous. And so I'll convey that question on their behalf. And the question is, how did you come to make this movie? And how does it fit into the arc of your career as a director?
That's a great question. So I think it was October of 2016. So just about this time, 4 years ago, I read an article in the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, online. And it was, and the headline said, Black rabbinical student leads army of moms on the south side of Chicago. So I was intrigued and I scrolled down and I saw a picture of this striking young woman named Tamar Manasseh. And I started reading about the amazing work that she is doing on the south side of Chicago and the organization that she created to take on gun violence. And what really grabbed me was that in the article, Tamar said that it was her Judaism that caused her to become an activist. So I immediately gravitated to that, and I thought to myself, she would make a really interesting subject for a documentary film. So I reached out to her on social media and through her organization's website. I introduced myself. I'm a filmmaker in New York City, and I think you would be a really, let's talk about maybe making a film because I think you'd be a great subject for a film. So I heard nothing back for a while, and I kept trying a few different ways. And finally, I got an email back saying, thank you for your interest. I think my life is about as interesting as watching the paint dry, so I'm going to pass. And I was undeterred, and I wrote back and I said, with all due respect, I disagree with you, and I would really hope that you would reconsider. And we started an online dialogue. We would message each other every once in a while, and she wouldn't always respond to me. And then we spoke on the phone a couple of times. And as you know, just from the short time we've been together tonight, when you talk to Tamar, it's not a 5-minute conversation. So we spoke for a while, and each time I got off the phone and I thought to myself, she's even more incredible than I originally thought. And then one day she sent me a direct message on Facebook and she said, I'm in Staten Island. If you want to come and meet, you can come now. And I live in New York City. I live on the Upper West Side. And for anybody out there who knows New York, it is not close. Staten Island is not anywhere near the Upper West Side. And I said, I'll be there. Give me 2 hours and I'll be there. And I dropped what I was doing and I drove out to Staten Island and we sat down for a while. And at the end of the conversation, she sort of shrugged her shoulders and she said, I guess if you want to do this film, we can do it this summer. And that was pretty much all I needed. And in terms of the arc of my career as a director, as most of the films that I've been involved with are about a Jewish subject, whether it's the Holocaust or Israel or, African migrants in Israel, there's always this strand of my own background as a Jew that comes into what interests me as a filmmaker. So like I said, what interested me about Tamar's story is that she's an activist because she's a Jew. And I'm also really interested, I've become interested over the course of my career in people who pick up the slack when government institutions fail. So with African Exodus, the film that I made about asylum seekers in Israel, what was compelling to me were all of the organizations that popped up and the individuals that sprung into action to help the asylum seekers when the government refused to do anything on their behalf. So I see what Tamar does in really in the same light, that she has created this organization because nobody is coming to help people combat this problem. So Tamar said, I need to do something because nobody else is doing anything. And that is a very Jewish thing. And that's what was compelling to me about the story. And that's sort of how I see it fitting in with the other films that I've done.
Thank you so much, Brad. So we have a number of questions coming in, and I'm also seeing people using the raise hand feature. So I just want you to know that I see you, your questions are coming up. But we have another question also for Brad that sort of continues on the theme of your last question. So I want to call on Ronen Steinberg. If we could highlight him, Ariana, he has another question for Brad.
Okay, hi, sorry. I wasn't prepared to come on camera, would have shaved or something. I thought you'd read the question. So I think what I asked, thank you very much. Like everyone, I found it so inspiring, the movie, and then kind of meeting you like this, Tamar. Should I call you Rabbi Manasseh now?
No, Tamar's
At this
good.
point, Tamar is good? Okay.
I haven't come up with exactly the name, my nickname, my rabbinic nickname yet, but it's going to be something really cool like Rambam or Ram Tom, or I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. I'll let you guys know.
And I wanted, since I am on camera, I wanted to say I have the same plate as you do in the movie. You have the same plate
You
for
do,
Passover.
you do have it.
See?
You do the
plate.
same Seder plate.
Yeah. And I lived on 59th and Blackstone for many years.
Oh, not
Hyde
far.
Park.
It's not
Hyde
far.
Park, yeah, not far.
Hyde Park, not far at all.
But so really, thank you. It's so inspiring. It's really amazing. But my question was actually to Brad, and it was a question to, again, put you in your seat as a filmmaker, as a documentary filmmaker. I was looking at all the other people in the movie alongside Tamar who interacted with her, and sometimes you had cops even come into the frame at certain moments. So I wondered about how the conduct of people changes when there's a camera in the area, or maybe even a crew. If you got a sound person, it's got to have an effect, right, on what people do. And so I wonder what kind of interaction you have as a filmmaker at the moment when you're shooting the footage with the people that you're putting on camera. I'm asking for stories kind of from the other side of the camera.
Yeah, and that's a great question. That's a question that applies to any documentary film, really, and it's about personal filmmaking styles. So our crew was very small. It was me and the cameraman, and the cameraman also does his own sound. So we put a microphone on Tamar. We had a camera mic to pick up the other audio. But really, the way that I like to work is I want to blend into the background. I don't want, look, like you said, once there's a camera there, people act differently. There's no question. You can't pretend that it's just people acting naturally because people see a camera. So once we got going and we were filming there long enough, people kind of forget that there's a camera. So Tamar, for example, as you can tell from just listening to her tonight, she's very natural. So pretty much what you see on camera is what you see off camera. So with her, she doesn't really change on that much. And I don't think it took very long for her to just completely forget that there was a camera on her. But really, before we started shooting, the day before I showed up on her doorstep with the cameraman, I told her what my plan was. And the plan was, I'm going to put a microphone on you. You can ignore me. You can talk to me. We're just going to film. And you do whatever you feel like doing. Because really, what I'm doing is I'm filming her life. I'm not trying to get involved and say, hey, Tamar, why don't today you go and, buy, I don't know, something
Filter fish.
Buy gefilte fish, for example. or like, let's go to the Hungarian Hungarian kosher food store in Chicago. I would never tell her, this is what I want to do today. It was, for me, it was always, okay, Tamar, what are we doing? And I wouldn't even ask. It was just like, we would show up and we would do that. But then in terms of, so to speak specifically to the question that you asked, the other people who would come in and out of the frame on the block, of course, with kids see a camera and they go crazy. It's like they've never seen a camera before. And there's even a part in the film where the kids are like, is this for YouTube? Is this for YouTube? Or, you know, is this for TV? Because unfortunately, when kids in that neighborhood see a camera, they think it's a news crew filming after somebody got shot. But again, after you show up more than a few times, people see you, they know who you are, and they just you just blend into the fabric of the neighborhood. And that was really my intention. So again, I'm not going there to sort of like direct traffic and get people in and out. And if actually, you know, before we went live, we were joking around that I'm in the film a couple of times, because when you're out on that block, you have to actually be doing something. So if you're standing around doing nothing, somebody will hand you like a chair or a table, and the next thing you know, you're setting up a table and chairs, or you're working at the barbecue. That's just how it goes. So, you know, there are a couple of times where I'm actually taking food out of people's cars and bringing it to the block, or taking food out of somebody's house and bringing it to the block. Like, it just happens. Like when you're there, you're working because you feel like, well, I got to do something. You know, you see what's happening there, and just standing around, even if, you know, you're making a film standing around, you feel like, well, no, somebody's got to do something. So I really, I tried to stay out of the way. And at the same time, most people, when they were on camera, just sort of took it, you know, in stride. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you, Ronen, for your question. So we have a question from Essie Shachar Hill. And so I'm going to ask Ariana to spotlight Essie. And while she is coming up on the screen, we have a number of questions in the Q&A about where folks can watch the documentary if they missed it. So I believe we have it through MSU for one more day, through tomorrow, but that it is also part of the Detroit Jewish Film Festival next week.
Yeah.
See, Ariana is nodding her head, and so I just want you to know, if you're asking that question in the Q&A, we'll try and share some information. Maybe Ariana, if you could put that in the chat, that would be awesome. Essie, you have a question for Brad or Tamar?
I do. Thanks so much. And also my pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I have a question for Tamar. Hi, Tamar. I'm a Jew in Chicago. Loved the film. I'm also a social worker and Jewish professional. And, you know, this film was made a couple years ago, and it feels in some ways like some things are so different now. The cops in Chicago are like cuckoo bananas. There's people out in the streets. A lot of white folks are like waking up to the racism in this country. And it just feels like in a lot of ways a different landscape for some people. And so I'm just wondering if you can speak to if things feel different now, if your approach has changed, if the needs of your community has changed, or how anything this summer in the past couple of years have shifted in that way.
Nope, nothing changed for me. Everything changed for people like you guys. It didn't change for people on my block. It was always as bad as you see it is. Finally, people are seeing how bad it is. I was really worried when Brad was still editing this movie. I was really worried about, you know, what it was going to look like, the interactions that I had with police. And I was worried, like, okay, well, Brad, maybe we shouldn't put that in there, because I don't want people to think that I'm anti-cop or something like that. That's not what it is. It is, the relationship is just so contentious, and it's just so dysfunctional. I didn't want everybody to see all of that, because I didn't want people to say, oh, well, you know, she's just an angry Black woman and the cops aren't doing anything to her, and if they're not the problem, those people are the problem. I don't want it to be said. I don't want that to be what people took away from this film, because there's a lot of footage of me interacting with police. You just saw a few snippets of it. And now it's kind of like, we should have left more in there, because what everybody is seeing right now play out on social media and on the news networks has been happening for years, literally since I got there. So 6 years ago, when we started on that corner, I had a kid tell me, now this is a street kid. This is a kid who, I mean, can be killed by a number of people. But this kid told me, he said, I want to make sure that you know, if I get killed, the police killed me. And I want you to know that. They said they were going to kill me. And if something happens to me, the police did it. This is 6 years ago. This is ages before George Floyd. This is way before Breonna Taylor. This is before all of that. And this kid is telling me they said they are going to kill me. So if I die, that's who did it. Who 6 years ago, who would have believed me if I would have told a story like that? Who would have actually listened? Who would have listened to that kid? If I would have said, okay, you know, I'm gonna call my friend at Channel 7 or Channel 5 or Channel 9, and you tell this story to them, no one would have listened, but they're listening now. So it's like, I'm really glad that everybody else is kind of catching up to where we are, but it's like the situation in the community has deteriorated so badly between the community and the police. I don't see how we get that back on track. It's really hard to get that back to a place where we feel protected by the police rather than the people who the rest of the world are protected from. So yeah, I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad the world is starting to catch up with us. I'm glad there's this news cycle that's happening now. I'm glad social media is as popular as it is, so those stories get out there. So no, I haven't seen it. I mean, nope, no difference. Sorry, I wish that could have been happier, but.
Thank you, Tamar, and thank you, Essie, for your question. We have a question from a viewer who prefers to remain anonymous. So on their behalf, Tamar, you mentioned in the film that the question that you hate the most or that you resent the most is the question, how are you Jewish, right? Mm-hmm. And the question that we have from one of our participants here is, how do synagogue communities for specifically Black Jews fit into that picture, right? Is there if there was more if there was more integration of Black Jews into broader Jewish communities, might that lessen the number of times that you get asked that question? Do those things connect in any way?
This takes us back. This takes us back. Just think of, I do Yom Kippur on the corner, and I have 50 kids who want to come and talk about their friends who got killed over the year, or what they had to do to survive that they want to atone for, that they need to feel that closeness to God. They still need to feel like they are still somehow within they still are capable of redemption, of being redeemed, that they still have the ability to be redeemed, that they can still do that, right? They come to get that on a street corner. If it goes back to what I said in the beginning, if Jews actually were a bit more accessible, if people knew more Jews and we weren't so insular, then this wouldn't be happening. Because now, I mean, I have a Seder and 200 people show up to a tent on the corner. So it's not like people don't want to know more. They don't want to go to these places. It's just, where do they go? If they don't exist, if they're not around, where do they go? So most of the time, Jews live in neighborhoods really, really different from poor neighborhoods like the one on the south side of Chicago. So when you come there, you see a Black person come there, are they coming to rob you? What's happening here? So they have to go very far outside of their comfort zone, not just geographically, but mentally, spiritually, physically. Everything is so far outside of their comfort zone to access a synagogue. So the thing is, if you bring a synagogue to them, you don't have anybody asking, how are you a Jew? So if I keep doing what I do, I can build a synagogue on that corner with hundreds of Black people, with hundreds of all kinds of people, and nobody out there would ask anybody, how are you a Jew? It just wouldn't happen. Because in this neighborhood, people are Jews, because there are Jews here too. But if Jews only exist in one place and they only look like one thing, then yes, you are going to get, how are you a Jew? But when you open up Judaism to the world, when you take it out into the world, nobody's asking that, because anybody can be a Jew. Because on Yom Kippur, everybody is a Jew. If you're there and we're all there and we're all praying and we're doing a Yizkor service together, everybody is in the same space spiritually, we're all Jews when we're there. So nobody's asking, how are you a Jew? So if I come to you, yes, you're going to ask me, how are you a Jew? But what you really want to know is, how did you get here? Why are you here? Because there's nobody that looks like you in my neighborhood. There's never been anyone that looked like you in any neighborhood I've ever lived in, if I lived around all Jews. So that changes when you go to the South Side and you build something different. So now it's like, I don't worry about that. I don't really necessarily get, how are you a Jew, too much. And I'm thinking, in, let's say 5 years from now, I should never hear that again. Because at this point, Jews know that Black Jews exist. So there shouldn't be any more asking of, how are you a Jew? That just shouldn't happen anymore. Because do you think Southern Baptists, do white Christians ask Black Christians, how are you a Christian? No, they just are. Martin Luther King was hit in the head marching through Marquette Park by a Christian, by a white Christian. You know what he did the next day? He went to church and he talked to God about it. You know what the Christian that hit him in the head did the next day? He went to church too. He also talked to God about it. Martin Luther King never said, I don't want to be a Jew anymore. I don't want to be a Christian anymore because a Christian hit me in the head, because a white Christian hit me. That never crossed his mind. So the thing is, why can't that happen for Jews? I mean, like, why wouldn't it? So the thing is, like, I mean, Judaism is just it's changing. It's changing. So I think it does take integration, and it does mean taking Judaism out of our enclaves, out of our secret places. It does take that.
Thank you so much, Tamar. Another anonymous question we have that I think really relates to just the amazing passion that I think we heard in your voice in responding to that last question is, you come across as someone who is completely fearless, right? You make the impossible possible. You walk into spaces and are able to be loud and proud about who you are in all sorts of amazing ways. Is there anything that scares you professionally?
Personally, professionally, it's all the same thing to me. This is all because I was too afraid to lose a kid. I mean, both of my kids are Black, and Black kids are dying left and right in Chicago. They're dying left and right everywhere. I mean, Breonna Taylor was murdered in her house, in her home, while she was sleeping, she was murdered. So Black people, young Black people, are dying everywhere. And as a mother who is too afraid to ever be the mom that sits on the front row, to ever be the mom who gets the phone call because I have to go identify my kid, that is the fear that keeps me going. That is the fear that sets me on fire every day. That is the fear that sends me into spaces where other people would be uncomfortable to tell people, this is what needs to happen because I'm trying to save my kids. That's what this is about for me. So that's the only fear I have. And the personal is very professional, and the professional is personal. It's all one thing for me. So mask is not what I do is not necessarily a job, it's a way of life. This is my life. This is how I keep my kids alive.
Thank you so much, Tamar. Okay, we still have time for some more questions. So if you have questions for Tamar or for Brad, feel free to keep putting those in the Q&A or use the raise the hand feature. I believe we have a question from a third member of the Aronoff clan. This time, Mike Aronoff has a question.
I like that all the Aronoffs showed up for the party.
Mute, excuse me. My compliments, first of all, to Brad for a brilliant documentary. And Rabbi, I have to say, you are truly the most inspirational rabbi I've encountered in my 80 years.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you.
I think you are just amazing. I want to change the subject just briefly and ask you, have you ever been to Israel? And if so, or not even, what role does Israel play in your life?
I haven't been to Israel. And I have really conflicted feelings about Israel. I'm struggling with Israel. I saw Brad's movie, African Exodus, and just from other Black Jews that live in Israel. And I think I've learned so much from the scars of other people. And just seeing kind of the way the Israeli government treats Africans is bothersome to me. Definitely problematic. And the thing is, as an African, I can't go somewhere where Africans aren't welcome. It doesn't matter if I'm a Jew or not, I'm still an African. And so the thing is, for me, when we can all go there and be treated fairly, then I'll go. So, I've been thinking about it, and Brad has really been trying to get me to go. And we've been talking about, making a movie about that one time when Tamar went to Israel. We thought about this. And so since now everybody's on timeout and nobody can go anywhere, that's kind of been put on hold. But I do plan on going one day because I do feel like every Jew should do that. But as far as the role that Israel plays in my life, honestly, with this particular government and the way that Israel is being used against people, it really doesn't play much of a major role in what I do in my life every day, or my spirituality, or even my Judaism. As long as it's a political pawn, it just, anything holy about it has been taken away. It's just been completely sullied for me. So, once things change a little bit, I might feel different. You should ask me this question again in a year, and let's see where we're at then.
Okay, thank you.
I definitely plan to take her.
Yep. He said it. It's happening. So watch for that. That'll be another movie.
Thank you, Tamar, and thank you, Mike, for your question. We have a question from Christelle Erickson Collins. Christelle, would you like to come and ask your question?
Sorry, no, I would have preferred not to, but okay, here I am.
Hi, Crystal.
Hi there, how are you? My question is, what part of the film do you feel is most impactful or that you're most proud of?
I think the part that I'm most proud of is the part where my mother and I go to North Carolina. I think that's the part I'm most proud of, because so many Black people, they have no connection to that part of them. Who we are, our roots, is a privilege. It's a privilege to know that. You have to be privileged to find out these things, to know where you came from. And it's kind of like, this is me showing them, like, it's not a privilege, it's a right. We all should know where we come from. We all should know how deep our roots are. And I'm very proud of the family that I came from. I'm proud of the people who survived everything that they survived to get me here. So without those people in that cemetery, without those people in that place, the rest of the movie would never happen. I wouldn't be a Jew. I wouldn't even be here. So I think that going back to my roots, it really speaks to the fruit that the tree bears now. So I think I'm most proud of that part.
Thank you so much, Tamar. Thanks for your question, Christelle. We actually have another question about Charlotte, and one of our attendees has noticed that you are planning to present the film in Charlotte, and they were wondering how you both feel about that, given that it was also featured in the movie.
How do you feel about going to Charlotte, Brad? Do you think last time we were there, I mean, we made a lot of noise. So how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I feel like because of the situation that we're in, it's not quite the same thing because we can't go there and be there physically. And that definitely has an impact on, we've screened this in a lot of places, and ordinarily when you screen a film, you go and you're in the place. So we're not going to physically be there, but I'm very curious to hear what people in Charlotte think of the film. And I certainly am looking forward to hearing what they have to say. Hopefully we'll screen the film in South Carolina also, we were there for a good part of that trip too. But
we're never gonna be invited back to South Carolina ever again.
I think if it's a JCC screening, we'll be okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. A Jewish Film Festival screening, we should be all right. But when we were down there, Tamar earlier said that, the four of us down there, it was kind of a strange vibe. And it certainly was. Dan Coleman, who's the cinematographer, he and I sort of, whenever we would go into like a restaurant or any public place, we would sort of look around, because here we are, we're these two white guys with a young African-American woman and an older African-American woman. And we just probably stuck out like sore thumbs down there. And it was always like, we were always wondering, like, what do you think people think the four of us are doing together? Obviously when the camera was around, it was a lot easier for people to figure out, but we went places without the camera and people just looked at us and didn't really know what to make of us. But I think we'll be okay in an online screening at the Jewish Film Festival in Charlotte.
Something's happening with my Zoom.
Oh.
I'm trying to figure it out. Did you guys lose me? Can you still see me?
Nope.
I can
still see you.
Okay, you can still, okay, well, I'm just gonna talk like you can, like I can see myself now, but I can't. I don't know what's happening. But what I'm gonna do with Charlotte, I'm gonna do the same, like I spoke about earlier. I've actually had people reach out and tell me like we're having trouble with violence and everything else in Charlotte. And we'd like for you guys to come here and help us out. So I think that this is a really great time for me to do the whole bridge building thing in Charlotte. To try that out. It's not just about mask. Once again, it's about building a bridge. So, I mean, that's what I'm going to try to do when we speak to the crowd in Charlotte.
Thank you so much. We have another question from an attendee who wants to remain anonymous. So the question is, Tamar, throughout all of your amazing work, what is the most, or maybe one of the most sort of impactful experiences that you've had, or impactful things that you have learned through everything that you have done as part of this project?
I think the most impactful thing, there might be two or three. One of the most impactful things was actually allowing Brad to do this movie. It was actually opening up enough to Brad to do this movie, because growing up Black and Jewish, it can really close you off when people, especially white Jews, want to come and observe you. It can be really done in a way that doesn't feel very good. But it wasn't like that with Brad. It was actually like a friend wanting to get to know me, somebody who actually wanted to be my friend, and I want to get to know you. I'm not judging you or any of those things. And people often ask, like, it's like, well, how are you Jewish? And like I said, it pisses me off. But the thing was, the way he explained it, he said, no, sometimes people just want to know more about you. I want to know how that happened, because it seems really interesting. And just the way that he put it, it was great. It really, it did something to me. And it's kind of like nobody really breached that particular wall before then. I think it was another one was, there's a little girl on the block. She's 9 now. She went to school and told her, yes, I am Jewish. And she said, I'm Jewish because my Auntie Tammy is Jewish. And she said, well, what does it mean to be Jewish? And she said, well, Jews are good and they help people and they don't let the police take people to jail who haven't done anything. And they feed people and they make sure that people have clothes to wear and they take care of people. So I'm a Jew too. This is a kid who's never set foot in the synagogue. And isn't that really what we want our kids to believe that Jews are? And this kid picked that up, went to school and told her teacher that. And it's kind of like, you don't really know what impact you're having on lives until you're not there and a parent calls you and says, guess what my kid told her teacher today in school. So that was really huge for me too.
That's amazing. I studied Jewish education as my research field, and I've never heard a story like that before. That's amazing. So I have a question.
It is. It truly was.
Let me just say, before you ask your question, I just want to say that I don't think there's any better PR for Judaism on the south side of Chicago than Tamar.
I don't think there's any greater spokesperson for Judaism much more broadly than the south side of Chicago.
That's true. But if you want people who don't know anything about Judaism to have a positive view of Judaism, just bring Tamar to meet them.
Tamar, I wanted to ask about something you've alluded to at numerous points during our discussion so far, and that's that Mask has expanded beyond the south side of Chicago. Can you talk about its progress and how it has grown as an organization?
It is really doing a thing now. So after our first year, we expanded to Staten Island. That's why I was in Staten Island when I met Brad. So, and I think their chapter might even be bigger than Chicago's, and they're very active. And so we're going to be starting other chapters in New York City, because the thing is, it's not just about stopping violence as much as it is about building community. And community is anywhere. Everybody needs community. It doesn't matter how rich, how poor, how uneducated, how educated. It doesn't matter. Everybody needs community. So now we're doing a big thing in Memphis. And for Thanksgiving, and I hope everyone's listening because we really want everyone to donate. We're actually doing a Thanksgiving road trip where we're giving 1,000 families Thanksgiving dinner. So each bag is $25, and we're doing a Thanksgiving road trip. So we're giving away Thanksgiving dinners we're doing Chicago, we're doing Indiana, we're doing Memphis, and we're doing Mississippi. So people from Chicago are going to all of these places. We're giving out 1,000 meals. It's $25. You can go find our GoFundMe on our Facebook page. Brad, put the GoFundMe link up there. And it's $25 per. But the thing is, when you go to these places, you go and you help people. And we've seen, especially with the way that people are so deeply entrenched in our politics right now, and how tribal everything has become. There are people in red states who are suffering, and people in blue states won't help them just because of where they live. It doesn't matter if they're Republicans or Democrats or whatever they are. It doesn't matter. People in need are people in need. And so it's kind of like, I want to ignore that. I don't want it to be on the basis of party line or who do you vote for. That's the only way we're going to help you know you're in need. So we're going to help you. We're going to help you because it's just the right thing to do. So people who need help, it's a lot of really poor people who were affected by the hurricanes all year. It's been 1 million of them. We're now at Delta. So there have been so many hurricanes and so many catastrophes and so many, the pandemic, just so many tragedies that have befallen American families. So we want to do what we can to help out. So we're doing 4 cities now, 4 states. We are, the Memphis chapter is getting bigger and bigger by the day. We're building one in Mississippi. We're going to be building one in Louisiana, all of these different places. So we're expanding. So if you call us, we're coming.
Amazing. Sign me up. We've got a request to put the link for the fundraising site into the chat. And so I think Ariana is going to take care of that because that sounds like an amazing project to support.
I'm trying.
Professor Vermeersch has another question.
So I just wanted to go backwards a little bit and say that it just occurred to when I was watching it, your creativity was really amazing in developing this idea to begin with. Like, and, we've been talking about it being inspiring and exciting what you've done, but I'm really curious how you came up with this idea. I mean, it's a really kind of, it's an unbelievably creative kind of response. And I'm curious, how did you do it? And like, how did you get people to help you? Like, it's really kind of unbelievable. Would you mind telling us? Like, it's an incredibly creative response. How did it come to be?
It's not as interesting as you think. Literally, I learned how to do this from like my grandmother and my mother and my aunts. In the Black community, there is something called watching the kids. You can't go outside and play if you're not being watched. If there are no adults to watch, you can't go outside and play. And it wasn't because you were going to be abducted. It was because your parents, this is the first time that you're not tethered to them. And so you go outside and you play with your friends and they want to see how you comport yourself when you are not right next to them. How this is your first step of going into the world. You're just getting off the porch. And so I want to watch how you interact with other people. I want to make sure that you're not hitting people or punching people or taking things from other people. I want to make sure that I'm creating a decent human being, that I'm sending a decent human being out into the world. So the only way I can do that is watch you out here while you play with your friends. I'm going to keep an eye on you. And while I keep an eye on you, nothing's going to happen to you. So it's pretty much parenting 101. I figured that, I mean, what do teenagers hate more than anything? They hate their privacy being invaded. So, I mean, what could be more invasive than going to sit on a corner and barbecuing with your friends? I mean, what could do it? The thing is, people don't want to do bad things when their parents are watching, especially not when their mother is watching. So if you don't want to do bad things when your mother is watching, how about if 10 mothers are watching? Then what? So that's really honestly where it came from. It's just parenting. And it's like parenting, of course, on like steroids, but it's just parenting. So if I'm watching you, I'm making sure that you aren't hurting anybody and no one's coming to hurt you because I'm here watching. So it was really that simple. And when I think people, like when they heard about it, I think at first they just wanted to come see if we were really crazy enough to do that. Like, is she really that crazy? Like, she's gonna get killed out. But yet we showed up every day because there's nothing stronger than the power of the mother. There's nothing more powerful than that. So, yep, that was pretty much how that happened.
That's fabulous, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamar. I want to give you a chance to breathe for a second. And so I have a question for Brad. And I also just want to encourage our attendees that we do have time for a couple more questions. So if you have something that you would like to ask Tamar or Brad, go ahead and use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen or the raise hand feature. We have time for a couple more questions. Brad, we're a Jewish studies department. And, you know, for those of us who teach Jewish studies, who research Jewish studies, and for our students who are learning Jewish history and taking courses in all manner of sort of Jewish life and civilization, we know that engaging with Jewish experiences and with the Jewish experiences of others changes us as people, right? Other people's stories change us, whether we're Jewish or we're not Jewish. We're changed by learning about the experiences of others. We become more empathetic. There's so many qualities that we can develop by cultivating a sensitivity to other people's stories. And it strikes me that as a filmmaker, that's exactly what you're doing, right? You're learning just as we do in many ways within our own academic research to tell the stories of other people. And so I'm curious, how did telling Tamar's story change you? How did it change you as a human being, as a filmmaker, and as a Jewish person?
I'm so glad you asked him that, Laura. How did it change you, Brad? Do tell.
You know, yeah. I guess every film that I've made has impacted me as a Jew. Interacting with Holocaust survivors and hearing their stories firsthand, or speaking with Israeli Jews who are helping African refugees and, you know, Darfur genocide survivors, that impacts you. And you know, as Jews, we're always supposed to question things, right? And we're not supposed to just accept what we hear take it at face value. But we want to turn things around and sort of delve deeper into it. You know, working with Tamar is like on a different level than anything else I've ever done. Getting to know her as a person and getting to witness the work that she does has impacted me professionally and personally in ways that I can't even describe. To say that I'm changed is probably an understatement. You know, I didn't have any knowledge of what real life is like on the south side of Chicago until I went out there. And just seeing it for yourself, you know, it's not what you read about. I guess, you know, when people go to Israel for the first time and all they've ever heard about is war and terror attacks, then they think, oh, all of Israel is a war zone. And when they get there, they realize, wait, people live just normal lives and they go to work and they get in their cars. And it's really no different. But going to Chicago, you know, it struck me that south side of Chicago is the third world. And it's right here. It's not, you know, 6,000 miles away. It's not, it's in our backyard. It's us. And it's shameful. It's shameful as an American. It's shameful as a Jew that this exists and that people live in this reality. It feels like when you're, you know, I took my son with me on one of the trips that I made, and we drove from New York to Chicago, and we were driving around. We were following Tamar's car. We went from her house to the block, and my son was looking around and he said, "This is so much worse than how you described it to me." And it feels like an open air prison. You see police cars everywhere. You see boarded up buildings. They use the expression food deserts, but it's not a food desert that you see, it's a food swamp, because all you see are fast food restaurants and liquor stores. But then you get to the block and you see that there are real people who live there, and they are trying to live their lives like real people anywhere are trying to live their lives. And there are good people and there are not good people, and there are funny people and there are people without sense of humor. And it's like anywhere else. But the experience, Tamar allowed me to witness this and brought me into that world, and really explained things to me in a way that I could never have understood had I not been there with her. And just her bringing me to the block and sort of vouching for me gave me instant credibility with the people there. And they allowed me to document their lives. And really, they trusted me because they trust her. So without that, the film would not have been made. So that's really just a long way of saying that this incredible person who you've just spent the last hour and a half with is even more incredible than you think, if that's even possible. So, one of the things in my life that I'm most proud of is that Tamar Manasseh is my friend.
He wants to be like me when he grows up. I know. I'm the wind beneath his wings. I know, Bradford. I know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brad. We have two final questions, and I'm going to combine them into one. So the questions are: how has MASK as an organization changed things? So one question, Tamar, is: how has MASK as an organization changed your life and changed your family's life? What was your life like before MASK? And how has your family's life changed as a result of your involvement in it? And then the second question is: how has your work influenced relations with the police around your block? Because it was notable in the documentary that there was at least one policeman who you had some cordial conversations with. And so we have two questions on the theme of how has MASK changed things for your family, for you personally, and then in your community with that.
I have to bring Brad into this question. Brad, what did I tell you that day? What happened the day that cop was out there? What happened?
So that was actually the first day that we were filming, and it was the first day of summer. The Masons were out there, lots of people were out there, and there was a cop who spent a good part of the afternoon hanging out on the block and having a great time talking with the people out there. And I talked with him a little bit. He seemed like a really nice guy. And I thought, oh, this is great. And after we finished filming, I started, and again, I don't really know Tamar that well at this point. And I said to her, I'm like, this is great. Look at the cop was here and he seemed really into it. And Tamar looked at me and she said, mark my words, we will never see that guy again. And she was absolutely right.
We never saw him again. After that day, there was no more him. So the relationship that we have with the police is kind of like the one the young lady asked earlier that I told you. It hasn't changed. We still don't have a good, you can't have a good relationship with the police if the police don't have a good relationship with the police themselves. It's a lot of dysfunction that exists within city government in Chicago. And it's not just between the mayor and the police and the Cook County Board president. And it is a lot of dysfunction within the police department itself. So I don't think that they're ready to be in a relationship with anyone until they can be in a relationship with themselves, first of all. So that's where I am with them. But my family, since the movie wrapped, we actually built a school on that corner. So we built a school out of shipping containers. So that lot isn't vacant anymore. There's actually a school there. And so every day we have probably at least like 20 kids. So especially now during COVID, all of those parents, a lot of the parents who are essential workers, like it's a lot of parents who are essential workers that live in that neighborhood. And these are very poorly paid essential workers. And so they're faced with either losing their jobs or staying home with their kids. Because once upon a time, school was their childcare. School is gone, so they don't have childcare now. They can't afford childcare. So a lot of people are faced with like, hey, I might have to leave my 11-year-old at home to take care of my 5-year-old and my 9-year-old. And so we didn't want that to happen. So we actually opened our doors. We were actually building a trade school for young adults. And COVID happened and we had to switch gears and we turned it into pretty much an elementary school. So we have kids anywhere from 4 years old to 17. And so they come there every day and they do their e-learning, and we make sure they get 2 hot meals and they have adult supervision, and we do this every day. And they're learning on top of the work that CPS is giving them, because a lot of kids are behind. So we are doing whatever we can to make sure they catch up. They're getting a grade level. We have a kindergartner that is far exceeding grade level. And the thing is, the person who is teaching that kid is my son. And so my son and my daughter both teach in this school. So it's kind of like, I don't even remember what my family was like before this. But the thing is, 75th Street, those people are our family now. So our family has expanded. So my family is just as completely immersed in this and committed to it as I am. So it's our family business now. This is what we do. We do Tikkun Olam. That is what our family does. That's our family business. How do we help people? How do we make things better? Where are the problems and how do we fix them? That's what we do. So that's how my family has changed. So, I mean, I'm pretty happy about that.
Tamar, what an inspiring way to close this amazing conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Brad, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Ariana for manning all of the technology, and for Yael and Kirsten for being on the panel. And of course, thank you to all of our attendees who have been typing in questions fast and furious, and the overwhelming message that has been coming through in the Q&A was just how inspiring everybody found this film. And goodness knows we could use a little bit of hope and light and inspiration right now. And Tamar, thank you so much for bringing that to us here in Michigan today.
Thank you for having me. Everybody, please go buy a Thanksgiving bag. Help a family for Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.